Whoa, gotta dust this guy off. Man, it's hard to believe this is 7 years old. It literally feels like only yesterday. I didn't mean to do that. Hey, what is up everyone? Welcome back to another throwback review because this is one that has been sitting on my shelf for quite a long time. This of course is the real grade Strike Freedom Gundam. So I find it so hard to believe that this came out 7 years ago in 2013. I actually remember there was a bit of a launch event outside of Yodobashi Camera in Akihabara for this particular kit the day I went to pick it up. That honestly feels like it was yesterday, so that is blowing my mind completely. Anyway, as always, I will put a little bit of a disclaimer at this point saying that once again I did build this 7 years ago, so I might miss some aspects about it. It may be missing some parts, it might have aged a bit, so it may not be the most accurate of reviews, more like a little bit of a throwback. But anyway, here we go. So anyway, getting right into it, there is the real grade Strike Freedom Gundam out of the box, snapped together with some of the decals. This has not been panel lined, and this is the way that I built it 7 years ago, and it's held up quite well since, because mainly, I've never really touched it. Just built it, put it on the shelf, that was about it. But I will also mention that this did get shipped from Japan, a big old box full of other real grade and high grade kits, so it got the crap knocked out of it, and it's still holding up okay for a early real grade kit. Although it does not really need to be said, this kit's strongest aspect is its looks. It does fall short in some other departments like how solid the joints are, its posability, the action base adapter, etc. But it really does hold up when it comes to the absolute beauty of this kit. This Strike Freedom Gundam right here looks fantastic. The color separation on here is great. We've got the two shades of white, that is the pure white you can see up top on the shoulder there, and the light gray on the bottom. This always gives these kits such a premium, awesome feel. As for the other colors we have in here, we've got that red, which is very nice, goes very well with that dark navy blue. However, I will mention, as is usually the case with Bandai's dark navy blue plastic, this does mark a lot. So if you're trying to clean up nubs on here, it is easy to scuff the surface. So you may need to take a little bit more time with these particular knobs, maybe actually chop them away with something like a X-Acto knife as opposed to filing it. The file I used for this is a very, how can I put it, light file that doesn't usually mark, so if you use something like sandpaper or a rough file, this is going to get messy. However, as you can see, there is some mold lines there as well, so this is a difficult thing to clean up, and you may need to top coat it to get rid of all the scratches that it's going to end up with. As for the gold on here, this is that pearlescent metallic injection gold. Some people love this, some people hate it. To me, I feel it does look a little bit on the gelatinous and cheap kind of looking side, and I feel it doesn't really match too well with the premium look of a real grade. However, if we flip him around to the back, we do have a second type of gold on here. So this essentially is just gold paint. Bandai has painted this on the runner, so it has a very actual gold kind of look. The usual issue you get from painting gold on the runners is that whenever you snip off a nub, you get a big old mark on it, but the nubs are hidden quite well. I don't see any on here, but there is some very apparent mold lines, so this might drive you mad as well. So at first glance, this thing looks ridiculously good, but on that second look, up close, there is a lot of issues that you may not like. However, even with all things considered, it's hard to deny that killer Strike Freedom glare. Also, before I totally forget to mention it, we do have a bunch of stickers in here. We've got these gold ones up there in the corner, those ones. It is rocking on the inside of its joints, and I did use some, not all of the decal style ones, which you can see up on the shoulders, on the side skirts, and a bunch of other places all over the kit. These are sticker style decals, so you can't see the edges, but they still look pretty cool. So now moving on to the accessories, and here's the real grade Strike Freedom Gundam with absolutely everything that it comes with. So essentially this right here is the standard Gundam loadout of sword, board, and beam rifle. This sword, of course, being those two beam sabers. The board this time around is an energy board, being that energy shield. And instead of just one beam rifle, we've got two. On top of that, then we've got a bunch of hand options, which are widespread dynamic. The typical real grade set of fists. Once again, typical again for a real grade. These are the posable hands. Then we have holding hands. And that's not a hand. That's a really bad base adapter. From what I can tell, this kit came with two 1/44 scale pilot figures, correct me if I'm wrong, those two were in the Ziploc bag I kept it in, so I can only assume they're from this kit. So even without any of that equipment, the Strike Freedom Gundam is armed to the teeth, so let's talk a little bit about the onboard weaponry first. First up on the head, we've got a pair of CIWS, which is basically Seed's answer to the standard Vulcans you'd see on the head of a Gundam. These are color separated, always a nice touch. Next up then the chest, we've got that Calidus multi-phase beam cannon, basically a big old chest gun. Mounted then the hips, we've got two Xiphius 3 railguns, and both of these can fold out and extend, just like this. Right here. Each of those blue segments on the wings are a Dragoon, so each of these can detach from the mobile suit. All you have to do is pop and pop. There's a quick example of what they look like attached, but it is quite disappointing that there is no way to attach these to any kind of action base. All I've done, believe it or not, is just stuck it on to this stand with a bit of sticky tack. Definitely a bit of a low-tech solution, but it works. Also, there's a little bit of an example of what the wings look like without the Dragoons attached. So moving on to some of the stuff that is not attached to the mobile suit, and first up is the beam sabers. I will mention that the beams did get bent in transit when I posted them from Japan to Ireland. They don't come wiggly in the box like this. The beam saber handles do have a tab on them for attaching them into the hand, which is simple enough to do. So split the hand in half, pop the beam saber in like that, and then sandwich the handpiece back on top like so. Attaching these into the hands is simple and done in the usual kind of way, and that is what it looks like with them attached normally. There is also the option of doing this right here, popping the two together into an extra long Darth Maul style beam saber. Pretty cool. Next up in here then we've got the beam rifles, and in standard real grade style, these are definitely very premium looking. We've got some extremely nice color separation, some decals for using on them, and on the whole, they match the mobile suit perfectly and look great. These attach onto the Gundam the exact same way in the exact same hands as the beam sabers, and once again, just like the beam sabers, these can be held individually like you're seeing right here, or both of these can be attached together, once again just like the beam sabers to form an extra long, high-energy beam rifle. When the beam sabers are not in use, they can be stored on the side skirting armor like that, and as for the beam rifles, just flip this back. There's a little holding section in there that you pop forward, and then they just clip onto those like their side skirting armor. Lastly then, we've got that beam shield. To attach this, you just take off that red piece, attach the shield onto the red piece, and then reattach everything. That blue effect you're seeing right there is just a sticker, but it does work extremely well. The sticker still maintains the nice transparency, but gives it a nice, quasi-vigorous look. So now moving on to the build and the articulation, and from the beginning of this review until now, this kit has developed full early real grade syndrome, and this is only going to get worse. If you don't know what early real grade syndrome is, well, it's that, it's floppy. So basically, to simplify it, all real grades before the RX-0 Unicorn Gundam had this right here, the B parts runner, which was a fully molded inner frame, which looked like that right there. From a technical standpoint, this is really cool, but this is made out of a soft material somewhere between normal Gundam plastic and what a polycap feels like, and this over time, and not a lot of time in some cases, degrades and goes from relatively stiff and nice at first to a floppy, droppy mess. So Freedom right here, or should I say Strike Freedom, is in the early stages of early real grade syndrome. So that means it is struggling to stand up now, but it can still somewhat stand up, although in a bit of an awkward stance. Over time, he won't be able to stand up at all without some medical intervention involving disassembling it and tightening up all the joints. Definitely a bummer. So anyway, let's try to fast track this articulation. So, giggity 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 goo neck, not the greatest giggity, also not the greatest goo. There's the head looking all the way up, the head looking all the way down, and looking side to side, but that collar kind of causes the head to look somewhat up the way when turned to the side. There is a lot going on inside of the shoulder of the Strike Freedom, so it can move from standard position like that to all the way forward like that. As for that arm raise from there to there, the shoulder armor is somewhat separate to the arm, so they move independently. Full upper arm rotation, as usual. We've got a 2-point elbow bend, which goes from there to there to there, so it is undeniably a nice bend. The wrists on most of the hands are ball joints, so they can rotate round, flex, and extend. As for the ab crunch, there's it in the standard position. That's about it. All the way to the front, it is extremely loose, and all the way to the back, not very pretty. Some limited waist rotation. There's the home position, all the way right, and all the way to the left. Those railguns can move up to there, but there isn't really much of a point. They are floppy and droppy. Fairly generic front skirt. There's all the way down, all the way up, and extremely extremely premium butt flap back here, so it can move up a lot. There's a couple of joints involved in the movement of that particular butt flap. Next up, we've got a dropping hip mechanism that's all the way up. Pull it all the way down. There's a locking mechanism below that. What we get then is a kick all the way up to the front, so not too bad. Then all the way out to the back, again, not too bad. And then all the way out to the side, which is perfect. Rotation at the upper leg from there to there, but it does get a bit blocked because of that armor lip at the front. Knee bend goes from there to there to there, which is a really nice knee bend. Also, you'll notice that the armor on the knee does move when you move that, so that is nice. As for the ankle joint then, testing it on the ground, there it is all the way to the front, including that toe bend. Next up, there it is all the way to the back without it lifting off the ground, so not too bad right there. And last up then is the side to side pivot, which is about average. We've got an extension gimmick up in the shoulder, there it is closed. There it is all the way open. Opening thrusters in the back, there's closed. There's open. There's actually properly closed. And then as for those wings, there they are completely closed up. They can rotate up from here. The upper parts can spread like so. And there's an example of them fully open up. They can also move completely out to the back as well. Too bad everything is so floppy, floppy, floppy. So yeah, on the whole, the articulation on the real grade Strike Freedom is actually quite good. Only problem is, just like with a lot of early real grade kits, it is very floppy, delicate, droppy, and over time will just turn into a kind of marionette on you. Once again, you can tighten up all the joints and all of that, but if you don't like putting extra effort into your kits, this one may not be for you. So anyway, that right there is it for the review, and this one was definitely a difficult one to rank. So in the end, I'm giving this silver tier, but it's barely scraping that silver tier. The reason is because the looks of this really does make up for everything. If you just build this, pose it once, stick it on your shelf, it will look beautiful. But if you're the type that likes to repose your kits, maybe for photography or just for playing around with them, this will turn loose and floppy very, very quickly. The parts themselves aren't particularly loose, the issue is that internal real grade skeleton. But once again, it does look so good and the potential for an awesome kit was here, the technology just was not up to spec yet. If this was built the way that a modern real grade is, which is kind of like a tiny master grade, it could have been fantastic even with these current looks. Once again, if you want something that looks great at a small scale, that you're just going to put in a pose once, then this will be spectacular for that. But once again, if you want it for posing, playing around with, it's definitely a no-go. As always, thank you so much for watching. Make sure to come back for more gunpla reviews, and I will see you next time.